We tend to think of music as this deeply human thing, right? Pure expression, raw emotion. But what happens when you smash that together with the cold, hard logic of code? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today, the wild world of algorithmic music. And this whole idea really begs a huge question, one that gets right to the heart of what we even consider art. Can a machine truly compose music? And I'm not talking about just spitting out random notes. I mean, can it create something with style, with structure, and maybe, just maybe, something with feeling? Okay, so let's get right into it. And if you think this is all some new high-tech trend, think again. The idea of making music with rules is ancient. I mean, we're talking about Pythagoras connecting harmony to simple math over 2,000 years ago. Fast forward to the 1700s, where composers were, believe it or not, using dice games to generate waltzes. And that long road leads us straight through the first computer compositions to the AI collaborators of today. To wrap our heads around this long and winding story, here's our game plan. We'll start with the ancient idea of music by the numbers. Then we'll meet the first composers who were essentially creating algorithms by hand. After that, we'll see what happened when the machine entered the scene. We'll explore how people are composing with code right now. And finally, we'll wrestle with the big so what question of the ghost in the machine. All right, first up, let's look at this foundational concept, that music isn't just some kind of magic, that underneath it all, it's a system of rules that can actually be described with the pure, clean logic of mathematics. Our story really begins more than 2,500 years ago with the Pythagoreans. They were the ones who first really formalized this connection between sound and math. They discovered that the musical intervals that sound so pleasing to our ears, like a perfect fifth, actually correspond to incredibly simple integer ratios. For them, this was a revelation. It meant the universe and all the music in it was literally made of numbers.
And this brings us to a really crucial shift in thinking. The ancient Pythagorean view was that music is number. It's just a reflection of a cosmic, mathematical truth that's already out there. But the modern view is totally different. Now, we see numbers as a tool. Mathematics has become this powerful language we can use to actively model, analyze, and even generate entirely new musical worlds from the ground up.
This idea of a hidden structure really gets taken to the next level with theories like Schenkerian analysis. Now, don't worry about the fancy terms. Just think of it like this. The theory says that underneath all the complexity of a masterpiece by, say, Mozart, there's a simple core skeleton, a hidden blueprint. And if you can find that blueprint, it's like you're reverse engineering the very nature of musical genius.
So this idea of a deep, logical structure has kind of always been there. But then, in the 20th century, some composers decided to just flip the whole script. They thought, hey, instead of just finding the rules, why don't we start creating them from scratch? And they started to embrace chance and probability long before AI was even a glimmer in anyone's eye. And this leads us to the absolutely wild concept of stochastic music. So instead of a composer being a micromanager who dictates every single note, they become more like a musical meteorologist. They set the probabilities for things like pitch and density, and then they just let a storm of sound unfold. It's this huge shift from total control to managing a kind of beautiful, controlled chaos. The absolute pioneer here was a composer named Xenakis. Now, he was also an architect and a mathematician, so for him, applying statistical models to music just made perfect sense. He used things like probability distributions to create these massive, shifting clouds of sound. Textures so complex that a human could never write them down note by note, but by defining the underlying math, he could bring them to life. For centuries, these complex ideas were mostly just that, ideas on paper. But then came the absolute game changer, the computer. And suddenly, all these abstract theories weren't just for academics anymore. They became powerful, practical tools for actually making music. One of the first key methods they used was the Markov chain. Think of it as a style imitator. It's pretty amazing. You feed it a ton of music by, let's say, Bach. It chews through all of it, analyzing every single note, and calculates the probability of what note is most likely to come next. And once it's learned all of Bach's little statistical habits, it can start generating brand new music that sounds uncannily like him. And this is a fantastic illustration of how it works under the hood. On the left, you've got the raw numbers, the probabilities. It's basically saying if we're on note C, there's a 70% chance the next note is a G. On the right, you see the same info but as a visual map of the possible paths. The algorithm just follows these probabilities, hopping from one state to the next, creating a new melody that follows the original style's logic. Okay, but if you thought that was cool, this next one is even wilder.
because it's directly inspired by biology. Genetic algorithms literally treat musical ideas like they're living organisms. You create a population of musical phrases, you encode them as digital chromosomes, and then you just let them evolve.
The process is basically natural selection for music. You start with a big pool of random musical ideas. Then, the computer gives each one a fitness score based on rules you've set, like, I want a harmonically correct melody. The best ones, the fittest, get chosen to be parents. Their musical DNA gets combined, maybe with a few random mutations thrown in, to create new offspring. You just repeat this cycle over and over, and you can literally watch as the music evolves toward your goal.
So all of this amazing evolution in technique brings us right up to the modern day. And what's really interesting is that the conversation isn't really about machines replacing humans anymore. It's about this fascinating collaborative dance between the two.
And a perfect example of this dance is live coding. This is a whole performance art where a musician gets on stage with a laptop and writes and modifies code in real time to generate music. Often they'll project the code onto a screen for everyone to see. It's this incredible, high-stakes improvisational duet between the performer and the machine.
But perhaps no one has pushed this human-machine partnership further than the composer David Cope. He spent decades of his life developing programs to act as his composing partners, and the most famous one was called Alice.
Now, Alice is like a style imitator on steroids. It goes way beyond simple statistics. It's designed to find a composer's unique musical fingerprints, what Cope called their signatures. It analyzes a composer's entire catalog, learns their voice, and then it can generate brand new pieces in that style that are just shockingly convincing. It's the ultimate ghost in the machine.
And here's where it gets a little unsettling. Even Cope himself talked about how strange this collaboration was. He said it was hard to watch his machine partner create this fluent, perfect music without any of the struggle, the self-doubt, and the emotional turmoil that's so much a part of being a human artist. And that really makes you stop and ask, what is it that we truly value in art?
So, after this incredible journey all the way from ancient Greece to modern code, where does that leave us? What does all of this actually mean for the future of music and creativity?
Well, let's recap the big points. First, this isn't new. It's a very old idea with a modern high-tech twist. Second, there are tons of ways to do it, from controlling chaos to imitating styles to evolving new ones. Third, and this is key, today it's mostly about collaboration, not replacement. And finally, maybe the biggest idea of all, the artistry itself is shifting. The composer is becoming less of a note writer and more of an architect who designs the system that creates the possibilities.
Which brings us all the way back to our first question. But now it feels a lot heavier. The question isn't just, can a machine compose? It's, what happens to our definition of a composer when it does? If an algorithm creates music that truly moves you, that makes you feel something profound, who's the artist? The human who designed the code? The machine that executed it? Or is it something entirely new? Now that is something to think about.